In a recent video, while cleaning out my emergency storage shed, I think it was episode 52, we come across this old box. It's a nice old finger joint box, but the glass on top was broken and the lid itself has come apart. It looks like there's no major damage to the timber, so let's see if we can fix it up. Cut some new glass for it, re-glue the top. We'll probably clean up the timber a little bit with a bit of a trick I use. And we do have to replace the bottom panel as well. You can see it's got a white rim around it. It's just a sheet of masonite. The box itself would be early 1900s. The lock has broken, but it'll be a great little display case in the shop. So let's try and fix it up. So we'll use the broken glass to measure up a piece. I think it's pretty similar to just picture frame glass. So hopefully I've got some for that. So we can get our dimensions straight off that sheet. There's a little corner piece. Now the joints are really nicely done. They're what they call a finger joint. They're not actually a dovetail, and they don't appear to be broken at all. I think the glue has just basically broken down and dried out, as it does. The old glue they used on these was pretty much just a I'm not sure what it was. It was an animal or hoof glue from horses or something or other. I don't know. It's fairly primitive. It's possible to heat it and it may soften, and we may be able to just slide the joints together, but I think I'm better off to just sand each of the fingers, get it a smooth fit, make sure it fits in nice and snugly, and then I'll just glue and clamp it with a modern PVA glue. The hinges on the box appear okay. They're original brass hinges and they look okay. So we might even not have to take that off. It probably would be easier to take them off, then we can clean up the top of the case as well. The bottom piece will knock out. I think it's just been nailed in. Looks like it's just got little nails around the edges. They're not even right in. So that'll be easy to remove. We'll leave that on for the moment, just so that we can keep it square. The original lock here, there's a little keyhole there, and a nice little brass lock, if you can see in there. But the latch is broken. I think that part there is actually part of the top piece. Oh, the top piece is on the other bit of wood. Yeah, there we go. So I don't know if it's been forced open and it's broken or not, but I'm not going to worry about it. We won't need to have it locked at the shop. If I do find a similar size lock at some stage down the track, I might replace it. But that should still clip in together when the lid closes. So first step, I guess, is to try and cut a piece of glass. Then we won't have to remove the beading underneath. We can slip the glass into the frame. We'll sand up the finger joints so that can then be reassembled, and so that will slide in with the glass in it. We'll glue and clamp that. Once we've got the top done, I think we'll take the bottom piece off and cut a bit of ply, just some older plywood for that. I'm not going to fully restore it at all. We'll just make it functional. And the trick I referred to is this is most likely a shellac, and we'll tell when we wipe a bit of methylated spirits on it because it actually melts the shellac. And all I'm going to use is some very fine steel wool and some metho, and it'll clean it up quite nicely. It'll take off most of the shellac, and then we'll just probably give it a coat of beeswax. We'll finish it. There's numerous holes all around the timber, little nail holes there, a screw hole there, and I noticed some in the end as well. So I'm not sure what they were for. Maybe it had I don't think it was a writing box. I think it was always meant to have glass in the top. But it's possible that it had another piece, an insert in here that was screwed from the outside. I'm not going to worry about those holes. It's part of its story. So, okay, let's go and find a piece of glass for a start. Okay, we have 259 mil by 391. I took the little piece with me to make sure I had the right thickness, because remember, we're not going to alter the little pleats in the lid, so we need the right thickness. And I found this piece. So it's outside, that's where I stacked some of my old glass. It's a part of it's broken both sides. It was glass in a very old picture. Hopefully it cuts okay. Sometimes the old glass can crack where you don't want it to. But we'll get a big enough piece out of that if I can trim it down successfully. First thing though, I'm going to go out and wash it. You have to have your glass very clean for a successful cut. Okay, you can probably hardly see the glass over the towel, but I've just washed it outside with some soapy water. Got all the mud and general grime off it. And now I'm just wiping it down here. And then I'm also going to use some glass cleaner and give it a spray there and a wipe on both sides. And I'm going to finish it off with a bit of methylated spirits and some scrunched up newspaper. So, as I said, if we get the glass absolutely sparkling clean, it tends to cut a bit more easily, and the glass cutter will score it without any troubles, I hope. There we go, squeaky clean. Okay, I've got a good straight edge on the bottom, so this square will give us this side. I've just marked down here with a fairly fine point texture. It should be finer than that, but it'll do. And our height is there. We just have enough to get across. I don't want to have too much, I don't want to have too thin a piece to break off. Glass snaps very easily if you've got a decent amount. If you've only got a little strip, it's rather hard to get a neat break. But I think we'll have enough there because we've got an inch or so over this side. So we can measure up here and we'll do a line across the top there. Once we mark out our square, we've actually got 1, 2, 3 cuts. We'll cut the longest part first and then trim up the sides. Hopefully it breaks cleanly. Old glass can be a problem, as I said, but fingers crossed. Okay, let's cut this long side off. You're probably getting lots of weird reflections in the glass. Now, I've allowed for the thickness from the cutting tip to the edge, so I can run it along the ruler. This square is lined up nicely anyway, so it's just a matter of just making sure that the tip is where you want the cut. And I'll start right next to the edge using fairly firm pressure. And you really want to do it in one go. You don't want to have to go back over it. And you should get that nice scratching sound. There we go. That should be fine. We've got a nice score right across. And that's where the clean glass helps a lot. If you have dirty glass, it's hard to get that scoring sound right through. So I've just got a piece of dowel here. I'm going to rest it right under the score. That should be pretty good there. And just push down both sides. And there we go. Beautiful clean snap. So that's got the biggest piece off. Now we can do this little side over here. And we also still have to mark our width. So I'll cut this side off first and then we can get a good measurement on our width. Again, I've allowed for the thickness of the cutter. Whoops. Okay, a bit of a double take there. I think the edge of the cutter rode up on the square. I probably should have something slightly thicker so it runs along the side nicely. It's been a while since I've cut glass. Hopefully that doesn't present a problem. Okay, I'll place our dowel over the middle of the score. Now it's a bit hard on thinner pieces, so we don't have the luxury of pressing down evenly. I think I'm going to do a bit of a karate chop. Perfect. Look at that. So just one side to go. Okay, I've got a piece of board over my square now, so we should be able to run the glass cutter much more securely along that. Okay, I think that will do. I do believe you should probably lube these with a bit of kerosene or something. It was actually not scoring smoothly at the end. Probably they glide a bit better with a little bit of lubrication. I haven't tried that, but that's what I've read. So I guess I'll try it one day and see what happens. Okay, our last cut. It's always a bit more tense on the last cut because you've got everything else perfect, and if it goes haywire and takes a corner off, well, that's a shame. You've got to start again. I think we'll be fine. Karate chop again. Very good, except the end here. Oh, because it got pretty thin. But it didn't cut through in the bad spot, so I think we'll just have to, should be able to just press that. Yep, good. Oh, there's a little bit to grind off. And that's where it gets awkward. Some of the glass cutters give you these little thingos, but I've never had much success with those. I guess it has to be a snug fit. Well, that one's not bad. Let's hope we don't make a mess of this. It won't really matter because if it's a little bit jagged, as long as it fits in the frame, you won't see it. Let's see if we can just snap that off. No, it's too big. What about the bottom one? That's better. Oh, there you go. That worked nicely. One little bit I'll just take off with a bit of emery paper. Yep, that will be fine. Now that we've got our glass organised, let's remove the remainder of the lid. And I think I'll buff these hinges up because they'll look nice with the brass hinge against the nice old timber. I think the timber is cedar, by the way. They made these, yeah, it's certainly got that red cedar look to it. It's not a pine grain, so I think it would be cedar. And I'm pretty sure it'll have a shellac finish. But we will certainly find that out once we put a bit of methylated spirits on it. Now the screws are brass as well, and the middle one looks like it's underneath something. Some muck or a bit of an old spider's nest or something or other. Oh. I don't want to chew the screws up too much. Fair bit of downwards force and it's going to come out. So that's removed those hinges. We'll take them off this board as well, and we'll give these a buff up on the wire wheel as well as the heads of the screws. And they come up pretty well. There is a name on them. It says, I think it was Hodges Lock Joint or something, which was an English company. One of them does have a little break. One of the pivot loops there is broken off, but it's still going to work fine. So that's those done. Next step, I think I'll clean up these finger joints and we'll fit the lid loosely together. Perhaps that's then a good opportunity to clean it up before I glue the joint, so that then when it's clean we can slide the glass in and then glue it. So that saves having to clean the glass again later on if we fit it now and then splash metho and everything everywhere. Now cleaning up these corners, I don't want to remove too much material. In fact, I don't really want to remove any material except the old glue. So I'm just going to use a flat piece of steel here with some fine sandpaper and just run it through a couple of times. I can feel the, there you go, one or two swipes and it's freed it up quite nicely. So we'll do that for the bulk of the tongues. I'll get a small file in just to square up the edges in right at deep because the sandpaper is kind of curved on the end. We also need to clean out the groove here where the glass goes, because I noticed in a couple of them it's full up with dust and things. So once we clean all that up, we'll give it a dry fit and see how snugly it fits up. Don't think we really need, I don't really want to sand any of the timber otherwise. I want to retain its nice old patina, and the fine steel wool and metho will take some of that off, but it will, I think, leave a nice finish. So I'll go to and clean up all these jointing pieces. and then we can do a dry fit. Just trying a test fit of the glass, and the groove on the bottom part here is too close. The glass won't actually fit. The little battens are actually screwed. They have fine wood screws, so I will have to remove that one. But the glass is good in all the other ones. I don't know why that one's so close, but it's not going to fit, so even with it cleaned out. Well, that was a fair challenge, getting those tiny little wood screws out. For some reason they went in on an angle and it caused the gap to close up. So what I've got here is just a scrap bit of glass the same thickness, and we'll position a little strip of timber underneath at a suitable distance, and I'll have to re-drill the holes because I don't want to have excess holes in here. I'll just drill them back through nice and straight, and then we can refit the screws. They should be fine. There we go. That should do nicely. Alright, let's make sure it all fits together nicely, and I've got the glass the right size, and there's no more hiccups with the little battens to hold the glass in place. It fits nicely there. And our top piece. Excellent. Yep, that's going to work great. Alright, let's remove the glass, and then we'll just prop the frame back together, and we'll get out some steel wool, some fine 4O steel wool and some methylated spirits, and we'll clean all the timber up, and we'll do the same with, we probably should knock the base off the other one at this stage, but we'll clean the top up now anyway and just see how the timber's going to come up. Now, methylated spirits will melt the shellac, as I mentioned earlier, and you will find if it's not a shellac, it won't do anything. If it is, it will go quite sticky, and it'll start to rub it off. So what we're going to do, you can actually just use methylated spirits to revitalise a tired shellac finish just by giving it a wipe over. You can also sometimes remove the white milky stains you get, because it kind of melts through the shellac and then it resets. You do have to be a bit careful. As I said, it will get sticky if you keep wiping, and you will remove it if you keep wiping even further. We are going to use fine steel wool and basically remove a fair bit of the shellac finish, just because it's so broken down and it's so dirty. And I think if I take it back a fair way with the steel wool, it will smooth the timber out really nicely. And then some beeswax will, I think, give a suitable antique finish and protect the timber and nourish it a little bit. So I'm going to go around the whole lid, and we'll do the rest of the box as well with the steel wool and the methylated spirits, and give it a really good scrub, and it should clean it up quite nicely and take all the grime off it without losing too much of the patina. Now, as you're working it for a while, you'll find the steel wool gets sort of muckier as it's building up, and when the sides dry a bit, they dull off a bit, but you need to keep wiping the removed shellac and everything off with the rag. And one thing I like too, you can take little paint dots off and fly spots, and if you scrub fairly heavily in some areas, you don't want to do it in one spot, but it lightens up areas. So I think it's good to have a bit of a highlight on the raised points. It just gives a really nice finish, I think. So we're going to work around the rest of this. I've just about finished the lid area, and once we remove the base and fix up the base on the main body of the box, we'll do exactly the same with that. Now that we've finished cleaning the lid up, we've swapped the paper for the towel so you can see the timber a bit better. And the steel wool leaves it beautifully and smooth, silky smooth. And you can see we haven't sanded right back to the raw timber. It has highlighted the edges a little bit, but it's enabled us to get all the paint spots and everything off. And that will come up fantastic just with a beeswax finish. So that's how I like to finish a lot of this old timber. I'm not taking off all its history, but I'm cleaning it up and revitalising the finish. And you can see why I wanted to do this before I put the glass in, because now we can slide a clean sheet of glass in and glue these joints back together, and then just a slight wipe of beeswax over it at the end. The lid will be finished. We have the brass hardware ready to go back on it as well, but I need to work on the base next. So let's glue this up now and I can get back to it tomorrow. While the glue is drying on the top, let's knock the bottom off this box now. I think it'll come off fairly easy. They're just little flat nails. Oh yeah, it's moving. Alright, we should be able to pull the nails out with pincers now. And the bottom looks okay. There's no bad splits. I did see a bit of a chip off one corner, but it's only minor. So I think we'll be able to fit a new bottom there. What I thought I might try and do, I haven't used my little router very much, and I'm not overly experienced at routers, but I think if I just take a little groove out the thickness of the ply, then the ply can actually sit in, and that way we won't see the edges of the ply on the side of the box when it's sitting upright. So I'll get my little router out. I might just do a little test. That side's loose. We're going to have to re-glue that side too. But I'll do a little test with the router and just make sure I can manage to do that okay. And then we'll cut a piece of ply to fit in there. And we should be able to put some little nails and perhaps glue in it. It'll just keep it all square as well then. I think before we do that, we'll glue this corner. And then we might just give the whole thing the steel wool and methylated spirits treatment so that we can get right into the bottom here, because once we put the ply underneath, it's going to be a bit hard to get into the bottom corners. Okay, I've got the little Makita trimmer out, or a little mini router, and I just knocked up a corner angle here just to have a bit of a practice, and it seems to work quite well. So I've had a bit of a go here, and I've got the distance to about half. So it's about 5mm in. So if I can get that stepper right around, we can then cut a bit of plywood just to fit in there. I'm not deep enough yet. I'm going to do it in 2 passes. Because I believe you're not supposed to take too much depth at once. I've got a little fitting in here, or a bit, which I think is right for the job. And I'm not sure if the fence is set up correctly, because I've got to run the fence on the outside. And I'm going to have to kind of just square the corners up with a chisel. But we'll run this round here. I think it'll work okay. Okay, that seemed to work well. I'm going to have to just get down close and just get a bit closer to the corners. I only want to have to square it up with a chisel, so I think if I watch from down low it should be fine. And then we'll do another pass just a bit deeper so that it's about the thickness of the ply, maybe a whisker deeper, so that when the box sits on the bench it's actually sitting on the outer frame. We could probably put some soft felt pads on each corner or something. And yeah, I probably should clamp it. It does move around a bit when I'm guiding the trim around, but this is so light that yeah, it's working fine. But I think I'll, just to be precise on the corners, I might just clamp this end to the bench, and I'll do each corner at a time here. Well, that seemed to work quite well. I'll clean it up. There was a couple of little jagged bits, and I found going into the corners, because half the fence was off, basically wasn't guiding it, I kind of did the corners freehand a little bit. Probably not the recommended way to use a little router. And I know you're supposed to, I think you're supposed to drag it against the rotation of the bit. I did go both ways, but it worked fine. I mean, cedar's very soft and I wasn't taking a very big bite each time. So I think that'll be fine. I'll just square the corners up with a little chisel. Or maybe, probably the easier way is just to round off the plywood piece I cut. It doesn't really matter, it's underneath. We'll get plenty there to put a couple of light braids in, and we'll just run a bead of glue around there. But we have to cut a piece of ply and probably sand it up a bit and maybe give it some beeswax, and then we've basically just got to put the bottom in and screw the hinges back on. Now I have screwed the hinges on and put the lid on, and the box is upside down again, just so that it retains its square while I cut a piece of ply for the bottom. And I was trying to work out how best to measure up for the ply, and I thought we might try some brown paper and just sort of mark around the inside with a pencil, and hopefully it highlights on the edge, and then we can transfer that over to the ply and cut the exact right shape. Now I have left the corners rounded. I was going to try and chisel them square, but the cedar is so very soft and splits very easily, and because it's a finger joint, the top piece is only about 3mm thick, so it was in danger of splitting and breaking out. So I thought I'd just leave it rounded, and we'll just fashion the plywood to suit. So I'll tape this one end, or in fact I'll tape it both ends so it stays nice and tight, and then we'll just try and rub around it with a pencil. So now to transfer the shape onto a just an old bit of ply I had lying around, probably rescued from an old cupboard or something, because I thought that bit of ply would be handy one day. So we'll just tape this down. I thought probably the best way is just to run around it with a blade, and that should mark the ply enough for me to then cut it out. So I've got this edge lined up right against the edge. I've got to cut a bit off here because I want to round the corner nicely, and the end of this ply is a bit rough. So I'll run around it with a blade. I'll just finish taping it down, and then we'll see if we can cut it out and fit it into the box. I think this will mark the timber enough. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, I can easily see the cut into the ply, so that should work fine. Okay, yes, I can see that very nicely. So now we'll cut that out, hopefully without splintering the ply too much. Another thing by doing it this way is that if our box is slightly out of square, this will be slightly out of square to match it. Almost there, just I need to do a few adjustments. I've curved the corners off and it fits pretty good. It's a bit high around this side, so we'll just take a little bit off this edge. Just need a little bit more off that edge and I think it'll drop in nicely. The corners aren't brilliant, but I need to get better at my router work. But the depth is pretty good. Alright, we'll just get this tidied up and then we'll glue it in and just put a couple of very tiny brad nails in. And there's the new base. It doesn't look too bad. I was going to say it's age appropriate, but it's actually not, because the box has to be probably late 1800s, very early 1900s, and the plywood's probably 1940s, but it looks much better than the masonite. It went in quite well. I clearly need a bit more work with my router skills, especially on the corners there. It probably wasn't the right way to do the corners, but it's worked out okay. It's more than suitable for this box. All I'm going to do now is just run some very fine sandpaper just to take any burrs off the edges there, but it fits quite snugly. Then we just need to wipe the whole thing over with some beeswax. Do you like my little nail assortment here? I do keep a lot of old hardware that I find in sheds, and you can't beat rusty nails for doing a project like this. You don't want shiny brand new nail heads poking up. So very handy for old picture frames and all sorts of things. You can't buy quality rusty nails like that. All right, let's just clean it up a little bit and I'll find my beeswax and we'll give it a wipe over. And I decided to mask up the glass just because it's easier than cleaning beeswax off it, given the glass was fairly clean. All finished now. Doesn't that look magnificent? The old timber still retains all its old character. The beeswax really does a good job. And the plywood looks awesome. So pretty happy with that. It will make a great little display in the shop. I'll probably get Christine just to do a little little cloth base for it, just so we can rest some valuables in there. It might be a good little display case for some of the gemstones and the nicer rocks that I bring back from the farm, the crystals and that and such. So beautiful character. We haven't destroyed its patina too much. I haven't worried about the holes in the case. I didn't worry about repairing the hinge that was a bit broken. And we've brought it back to life. Oh, also the lock. I didn't worry about the lock. We're not going to lock it. I just left the parts there as they were. It kind of just clips together okay. And the base came up well. Much better than that piece of masonite that was on there. So not a perfect job by any means. I'm not a furniture restoration expert. But I think you will agree that's a lot better than how we first took it out of the emergency storage shed. It is quite a deep box, so it should be great for some of the gemstones and crystals and things that Mum's got at the farm that we have to move, and she will be selling some of them. So how about that? Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for coming along on the journey. As I said before, it's by no means perfect, but I think I've made a pretty good improvement. Catch you in the next video. Bye for now.